Good evening, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. This is IMAX Sports North Football video, and today I'm going over my Week 9 power rankings for the 2023 NFL season. Last week was probably my most controversial power rankings in 4 years of doing this. I had 4 teams in particular that people were, or 4 hot takes that people were particularly surprised about, all of which being in the top 16. And this week, I think, was one of the weeks where my power rankings aged the best ever, because all of my takes were supported by what happened in the games. So, without anything else being said, let's get right into it. First off, we have the dumpster fire. At 32, we have the Arizona Cardinals. At 31, we have the Carolina Panthers. At 30, we have the New York Giants. At 29, we have the New England Patriots. And at 28, we have the Chicago Bears. The Giants and the Bears have come back to the dumpster fire. They've been gone for a little bit. The Bears have been gone for less time, but the Giants have been gone for a while. But they both returned. It's too bad that Daniel Jones also got injured again after coming back from injury. But the Giants just looked terrible this week. They only put up 6 points. They just got absolutely demolished. And they had some glimpse of hope at some point in time, but now it looks like it's unraveling again. As for the Bears, they just had a very unimpressive showing this week. I expected the Bears to have an okay showing. I thought that they were improving. I thought their offense was getting better. But this week was not good. The Cardinals, the Panthers, and the Patriots have all stayed in the same position relative to each other. I was originally just going to put the Panthers at 31 for 1 week and put them back down to 32 after the next week. But Arizona scored 0 points this week. So Arizona's staying at number 32 until they score points again. And the Patriots, yeah, not much to be said there. They lost to another team that's below 500. Moving on, we have okay question mark. We have the Rams at 27, we have the Packers at 26, we have the Raiders at 25, and we have the Broncos at 24. The Raiders have the best record here at 4-5, but they also have the least impressive wins. They have I think the best team that they've beaten is Denver, and all of their wins are against teams that are in this category or worse. Generally speaking, I would give the head-to-head to the Raiders, but the Broncos beat Kansas City last week, and then they had a bye week. The Broncos have had the most impressive game recently, and they've won 3 in a row, or 3 of their last 4. One of the two. I believe it's 3 of their last 4. But Denver has played extremely well recently, and so because it's power rankings and because the Denver Raiders game was way at the beginning of the season, Denver gets the advantage considering they've won 3 of their last 4 games, and they are on the rise. The Packers and the Rams are at 26 and 27. The Rams lost to the Packers this week in horrifying fashion. The Packers demolished them. And the Packers it was a get-right game for Green Bay. Obviously, they're out of playoff contention at this point pretty much, but they were able to get back into a little bit of a groove today, hopefully. This was a good game for them. They had a solid victory, and they've just been horrendous for like 5 or 6 weeks in a row. So them getting a win is good for them. As for the Rams started off around number 10 to 15, and then they dropped to like hovering around 15 to 20, and then they dropped to hovering around 20, and now they're down to 27. This was a terrible loss for them, and with the injury to Matthew Stafford, I'm not sure how long he's going to be out. I just don't expect the Rams to be very good anytime soon. Moving on, we have some glimpse of hope. We have the Washington Commanders at 23. We have the Atlanta Falcons at 22. We have the Tennessee Titans at 21. And we have the Indianapolis Colts at 20. Washington, similarly to the Raiders, is 4-5. But their schedule, again, has been extremely easy. And a lot of their wins have come to, or all of their wins have come to pretty terrible teams. Washington's best win is against the Falcons. But again, the head-to-head matchup, I'm giving it to the Falcons just because the Falcons have had a couple of more... They've shown a little bit more prowess in a lot of their games. I think that there's more promise in the Falcons team, and they're slightly more consistent. You kind of know what you're going to get from them every week. Washington, you have absolutely no idea. That being said, the Falcons lost a pretty annoying game this week to the Minnesota Vikings with Joshua Dobbs. With Kirk Cousins' injury, the Vikings got Josh Dobbs, and so now they're down their starting quarterback and Justin Jefferson, and they're still winning games. They're now on a, I believe, 4-game winning streak after starting off 1-4, so they're now 5-4. and the Falcons are down to 4-5. Both the Falcons and Washington started off strong, and then they've both slowly regressed from middle of the pack to a little bit below the middle. As for the Titans and the Colts had a win this week against the Panthers. It wasn't like anything special. It was kind of what you expected from the Colts. The Colts have beaten the teams they're supposed to beat, and they've lost to the teams they're supposed to lose to this season. They've had a very hard schedule, and they did get an upset win over the Ravens by in overtime, which is the reason why they're above Tennessee. They have shown a little bit more fight against good teams. Tennessee did beat Cleveland in pretty astonishing fashion, but a lot of that was because of the Browns quarterback being injured. But yeah, generally speaking, the Colts and the Titans have had interesting seasons, but with Gardner Minshew and Will Levis, both of these teams look really interesting. I thought the Colts were good with Anthony Richardson, but I still think that they're interesting with Minshew. And Will Levis looks better than Ryan Tannehill so far through 2 games. I know they lost on Thursday Night Football, but they looked good. The Titans looked good offensively, and Will Levis looks very strong and looks like he has a good connection with DeAndre Hopkins. Moving on to Game of the Year, we have the Texans, the Chargers, and the Buccaneers. The Chargers haven't played yet this week. They're playing on Monday night against the Jets. If they win, then they'll move above the Jets. If they lose, then they'll move below Tampa. They really won't move many places depending on what happens Monday night. As for the Texans and the Buccaneers, Houston won their shootout game today, 39-37, I believe, in an absolutely astonishing game. The Texans got the ball back with no timeouts and 1 minute on the clock. CJ Stroud, the rookie quarterback, led them to a game-winning drive with 470 yards and 5 touchdowns against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Possibly the best performance by a rookie quarterback ever. Most likely the best performance by a rookie quarterback ever. 470 yards and 5 touchdowns is a game you'd only expect from some of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. CJ Stroud is looking for that, not only for the Rookie of the Year award, but possibly for the best quarterback performance by a rookie ever. And if he continues to improve at this pace, then he will be. Tampa has looked pretty good this year. They're 3-5 as opposed to being 4-4 if they had won this game. But it's a respectable 3-5. I thought that they were going to be terrible at the beginning of the year, and they've shown that they can play football offensively. Their defense has been iffy, their offense has been iffy, but generally speaking, their offense has been pretty good, and Baker Mayfield has kind of redeemed himself, in my opinion. Obviously, they're only 3-5, but Baker Mayfield hasn't had a terrible season, and Tampa doesn't look that bad. Moving on, we have probably contenders. We have the Jets at 16, the Saints at 15, the Bills at 14, the Vikings at 13, and the Seattle Seahawks at 12. Now, I want to preface this category by saying this is not a ranking of how good I think teams are. This is a ranking of how good teams are currently performing in the league. The Buffalo Bills are at 14, not because I believe they're the 14th best team in the league, but because they are not performing well currently. So, at 16 we have the Jets. The Jets had an okay start to the season. They beat the Bills week 1 after Aaron Rodgers' injury, and then they're able to bring it back. Now they are 4-3, and they play tomorrow night against the Chargers. If they win that game, then they'll probably move up to 14, but if they lose that game, they probably won't really go anywhere. They'll probably stay where they are. At 15, we have the New Orleans Saints. The Saints started off a little poorly, but since then they've really improved. They're up to 5-4, and they're on a bit of a tear since Alvin Kamara has come back. The Saints are looking good offensively. Their defense is one of the better defenses in the league, and the Saints look like a complete football team that's going to make the playoffs in the NFC and could potentially win a game or two. Buffalo is currently at number 14 in my rankings. This is because they've lost 3 of their last 5 games. And the Giants game, which they won 14-7 over one of the worst teams in the league, was decided by a pass interference no call. That if it was called, then Buffalo may have lost that game. The Bills have looked mid to bad over the last 5 weeks, and their only really impressive game of the season was their win over the Dolphins. Obviously, they beat the Raiders and the Washington Commanders by like 30 points each, but for a team that is considered a top 10 team in the league, that's not an impressive game. An impressive game is beating a top 10 team, playing well against top 10 teams, and the only game they've played well in against top 10 teams so far is the Miami game. Moving on to the Vikings, who are the opposite of the Bills. The Bills started off strong and they've fallen off. The Vikings started off 1-4, and now they're 5-4. They've won 4 games in a row. 3 of them, the last 3, being pretty significantly decent teams. They have a win over the 49ers. This week, Joshua Dobbs came in and they beat the Falcons. The Falcons aren't the best team in the league, but Joshua Dobbs is continuing what Kirk Cousins started with this team, and they haven't lost any games by more than 1 score. The Eagles game at the beginning of the season was close. They kept the Chargers game close. They kept the Chiefs game close. All of their losses were decent losses, and I know that they're missing Justin Jefferson for a few more weeks, and I know that Kirk Cousins is gone, but I think that the Vikings could seriously be contenders. As for Seattle, Seattle is 5-3, and they got demolished this week by the Ravens. The Ravens obviously are a very strong team, but Seattle has had a rough go at it the past couple of weeks. They did have one good game against the Browns, winning 24-20, but Seattle has been a little too inconsistent for my liking this season. Moving on to Midlife Crisis. Seattle could also be in this category, but we're running out of space. At 11, we have the Steelers. At 10, we have Miami. At 9, we have the Cowboys. At 8, we have the 49ers. And at 7, we have the Browns. Now, for all you Steelers fans, I sincerely apologize. I want to put the Steelers at 9. I really do, because the Steelers have proven more than the Dolphins and the Cowboys that they can win strong games against good teams. That being said, they don't have a consistent offense. The Dolphins and the Cowboys both have consistent offenses. They might have a bad game here and there, but the Steelers' offense is not consistent enough for them to win games in the playoffs. And that being said, although the Steelers have a good record and they've beaten good teams, I need them to get a better offense before I can put them in the top 10. The Dolphins and the Cowboys have had similar season trajectories, both starting off very strong, both having blowout games against other teams, both having amazing offensive performances. Whereas with the Dolphins' amazing offense, the Cowboys, it was a mix of offense and special teams. But then they both have had some bad losses. They both have struggled to beat good teams, and they've both been demolished in some games against good teams. The Dolphins losing to Buffalo 48-20, and the Cowboys getting demolished by the 49ers. Both of them lost this week. The Dolphins lost to the Chiefs, and the Cowboys lost to the Eagles. And they're both close games, but the Dolphins game really wasn't that close until they made it close at the end, and the Cowboys had so many chances to win the game, and they couldn't do it. Once one of these teams starts proving that they can close out games against good teams, they'll shoot right back up to the top 5. But for right now, they need to stay down until they can start winning games against strong teams. The Niners and the Browns are both interesting teams as well. The Niners started off as one of the best teams in the league. And then the last 3 weeks, they've lost 3 games in a row. They had a bye week this week, but because they're still on their 3-game losing streak, they're still down at number 8. And the Browns are at 7. They've had a very solid season so far. They've had a lot of strong games against good teams. And with Deshaun Watson coming back on the roster, I never even really moved them down that much. I moved them down thinking that they're going to be worse without Deshaun Watson, but it was really that one game with Dorian Finney-Smith that was their only bad game offensively. With Deshaun Watson back, I expect the Browns to be a top contender in the league. Moving on to the elite. Yes, we have 2 categories of elite this time. We have the Lions at 6, the Bengals at 5, the Chiefs at 4, and the Jacksonville Jaguars at 3. The Lions are at 6 mostly because of the loss to the Ravens, 38-6 or whatever it was. The Lions are 1-2 against some of the stronger teams in the league, and they've played very well against bad teams. But similarly to the Dolphins and the Cowboys, I need to see more consistency in those games against good teams. Their defense has improved. Their offense is great. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm a big Lions fan, but I need them to improve in their games against quality teams. They beat the Chiefs week 1. It was a 1-point game. That was a good win. But they need to start doing that more consistently. I know they have an easier schedule, so it's harder to get those games, but the Lions are a top team in the league, and I want to see them succeed. The Bengals are at number 5. The Bengals started off very poorly because of Joe Burrow's injury, but they've won 4 games in a row, and it hasn't been the easiest 4 games in the world. They've had some really tough opponents recently. They won a game against 49ers. They beat the Bills this week. And the Bengals are starting to really pull it together. They're starting to really look like a strong football team, and Joe Burrow's looking like himself. They're 5-3, but they are currently one of the most dominant teams in the league, and they are performing better than their record at this point in the season. At number 4, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, and at number 3, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Chiefs started off, they lost obviously week 1 to the Lions, and then they won 6 games in a row. They lost last week to the Broncos in a fluke divisional game. It was in Denver. There was snow. It was a divisional game. I don't really put too much stock into that type of a game. Kansas City lost a divisional game. It happens. But then this week they came back and they beat Miami. They're still one of the most dominant teams in the league, and they've had a lot of strong games against good teams. And at number 3, we have Jacksonville. Jacksonville has improved throughout the season drastically. They started off 1-2. They are now 6-2. They haven't had any issues since week 3, and they've looked like one of the best teams in the league. Finally, we have the dominant category. New category. I don't think I've ever had dominant before. We have the Ravens at 1, and we have the Eagles at 2. A lot of people complained last week that I had the Ravens above the Eagles. And yes, I'm aware that the Eagles were number 2 for a very long time, and then once I moved the 49ers down, I put the Ravens at number 1 instead of Philadelphia. The reason being, I think that the Ravens are the best team in the league. And the Ravens, yes, had been below the Eagles, but they had been climbing, and then they had a demolition of the Detroit Lions. And so the Ravens have been climbing the whole season, and it happened that they bumped up ahead of the Eagles the same week that the 49ers fell down. So, the Ravens are 7-2, the Eagles are 8-1. The Ravens are 5-1 against 500 teams, Eagles are 3-1. So, similar, Ravens have had more opportunities. The Ravens have had a harder schedule, 38-36 strength of schedule versus the Eagles' opponents being 36-41. The Ravens have twice as big of a point differential, 115-57. They are 6th in offensive yards, 6th in offensive points, 2nd in defensive yards, and 1st in defensive points. Eagles, comparable offensively, but they're slightly better. The defense is not even a top 10 defense so far this season. And that is my biggest issue with putting the Eagles at number 1. Because people were yapping in the comments, I just wanted to say I can't put a 19th ranked points defense at number 1 in the league. I'm a big defense guy. That's my bias because I'm a Patriots fan. But I'm a big defense guy. I believe in defense wins championships, and I can't put a 19th ranked defense at number 1 in the league. That's my biggest issue with the Eagles so far this season, and I know that they have a strong defense. I know they showed it last year, but I need to see that defense start showing up before I can put them at number 1. The Ravens have only had 3 games the whole season where they've allowed 20 points. One of them was in overtime. It wasn't in regulation. One of them was against the Cardinals, who had 7 points through 3 quarters and scored 17 in the 4th quarter during garbage time. And then the other game was a competitive game where they beat the Bengals, 27-24. They've really all had one legitimate game where an opponent beat them, where an opponent scored 20 points. And that is an impressive defense in this league. That's why I have the Ravens at number 1. And I respect anyone who says the Eagles should be number 1, but that's why I have the Baltimore Ravens at number 1. So, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace.